Hi, it's Mariam, and this is my final sketchbook from year 13, and we did have a title to follow. It was Variations and Similarities, as you can see, and then I did my own subtitle, which was A Polish Odyssey. I decided to approach this topic of variation and similarity by comparing and contrasting the journeys of my grandma and granddad in the Second World War. So on the first page, I looked at the artist Carrie Mae Weems. I then looked at the artist Rodchenko. He was a Russian artist and photographer, and he was one of the founders of constructivism, which really encapsulates the communist artistic ideology at the time. And I thought that was really relevant to this project, since it was looking at the journeys of my granny and granddad escaping communist Poland. And so I did a photographic response with black and white photos where I overlaid images of my grandma and my dad on top of some images of myself. And then I also did another response where I took a photo of my granddad as a young man and then as an older man. Finally, I did a rather cliche propaganda poster, but we can excuse it. Anyway, I then experimented with maps, and I printed out the hometowns of my granny and granddad, and then I sewed into the paper with some embroidery thread and just connected them together. That inspired me to look at Maurizio Anziri, who takes vintage photographs and sews into them with embroidery threads. And he often emphasizes a specific aspect of the face, like an eye or the mouth. And so I did a similar thing with my granny. It took ages, but I thought it was actually quite successful. On the other side, I did the similar thing with my granddad. Obviously, it looks slightly horrendous, so I put something else on top of that. But it's always really important to show when you have failures and things, just so your examiner can see your progress, because it shows them that you're experimenting with new patterns, new designs, which is exactly what I was doing here. I then looked at the artist Zhang Xiaogang, who actually has a series of paintings called Bloodline, Big Family, and that related so wonderfully to my topic or title. And so basically he takes red paint and draws a red line, a blood line, to connect between the different subjects in his portraits. And so I really wanted to use that idea. First, I did an initial response, which was an amalgamation of both Anziri's work and Xiaogang's work. And I wanted to strip away aspects of my grandma's identity, again reflecting the communist regime, which really influenced Xiaogang's portraits. And so I superimposed a mask over my grandma's face and then sewed into it in a style which is evocative of Anziri's work. I then did a response which was more directly referencing Xiaogang's Bloodline, where I took the red paint and linked the portraits of my great-grandma and my great-granddad. I then went to the Van Gogh exhibition in Tate Britain, and it was fantastic. Van Gogh's work always really inspires me. I mean, the colours that he uses and the expressive strokes are really, really unique. And so I took a photographic response to develop my ideas and give myself some new material to paint from. And so I dressed up in a somewhat traditional Polish outfit with a flower crown, which was very fun, but I attracted all the bees, which was not so fun. And then I did a self-portrait on the next page. Now, I really wanted to push myself away from the photorealistic work that I had done previously in year 12, which I linked above, and I wanted to become more expressive in my artwork and stray away from the meticulous blending that I previously clung to. I then explored different techniques using coloured pencils, and then I did an oil painting as an artistic response to Van Gogh. But what really inspired me was I went on Pinterest and I saw some artists had done representations of Van Gogh's work with embroidery. And so I thought, gosh, yes, Van Gogh's painting style often resembles almost stitches of paint. And so I really wanted to accentuate that in the background of this portrait, creating this tapestry behind myself. And so I thought it turned out really, really nicely. I thought it was very effective, and I juxtaposed that style against a more realist portrait. And the reason for that was I wanted to show the independence of my subject from the tapestry of culture and history and familial background which encompassed me. I feel like every individual does have that cultural tapestry which informs their life, but at the same time they are autonomous beings who are separate, and so I wanted to accentuate that with the different painting styles. I then looked back at maps and I decided to superimpose maps of my grandparents' hometowns on top of their faces. And so I actually drew these with a fine liner pen on some paper, and then I photocopied those drawings and printed them out onto the acetate. So that was my art teacher's brilliant idea, which I used throughout the rest of the project, and I just want to say thank you. And so yeah, I did these pencil portraits of both of them and put the maps on top. And then I looked at Mark Powell, who draws portraits of older, more mature men and women, but he does so using biro, which is very unique. And then he also often uses maps or old documents underneath his portraits. And so I thought that's a fantastic idea, and I really wanted to use the documents which my grandma had given me. So I photocopied them, and here is my first artistic response. I looked at my granddad as a young boy first of all, and then I did one of my grandma, and I did one of my great-grandma, which I printed onto acetate as well. I then printed my grandma and my great-grandma onto acetate and experimented more with the backgrounds, just continually developing my ideas and seeing different ways in which I could present their identities. And then I looked at Sabine Kussmaul, whose work I'd actually seen on Pinterest. Please, please, please do look at Pinterest if you're an art student, because there are so many amazing artists which I found just scrolling through on the train. But anyway, I was fascinated with the layers that she managed to create in her artwork, and so I used many different types of paper. I've got brown paper, black paper, tracing paper, acetate, and I just layered them all on top of each other. I did monoprinting. I just kept on experimenting with different colorways until I was happy with what I wanted to use for my final piece. And finally, I looked at Anselm Kiefer, and I really at this point wanted to depict a biological map, because I thought the journeys which my grandma and my granddad had were unified by one thing: the earth underneath their feet. So I really wanted to depict the earth, and so I experimented by taking wallpaper and I mixed sand with emulsion and wood chippings, which I thought really did effectively capture that mossy look of soil. And so after that I did some biro sketches, which were really just for direct observation because the examiners do want to see that. And then I decided to look at the composition of my final piece. And I knew that I wanted this big textured build-up, and so I used 3 different canvases, and eventually I came to my final idea. It's a fairly loose depiction of what my final piece would be. I think at this stage it's important not to draw something which is too representative of your final piece, because otherwise you don't allow yourself for a creative process when you're actually making it, because you always will decide to change something or add something or get rid of something even when you're actually making the piece. So I'm glad that I did do this fairly loose drawing. And then I did a final development and evaluation page where I looked back at my artistic journey and decided to use little stitches to link up the different artists I had looked at, because I thought my journey was quite sporadic and confusing and I just wanted to clarify it. And then finally I placed all the original biro drawings of my grandma and my great-grandma. So I have the first one here, the second one here, and then the third one here. And that is the end of my Polish Odyssey. So I hope you enjoyed, and I will show you some pictures of the final piece. I also want to show you the portrait which I painted. Let's see if we can get a close up. And so I really do love this, but I would prefer it even more if I had it upside down. I don't know why, but I think the eyes look particularly haunting upside down. It just becomes more striking to me. But either way, I'm very pleased with the work that I produced in this final project, and I hope you enjoyed it.